Hello, you are watching Shalom World News. I'm Marina Grosu from Washington, D.C. Here are the latest headlines from around the world. The Vatican announced on Thursday that Pope Francis's stomach surgery took place without complications. A spokeswoman for the Vatican said the 86-year-old pontiff will spend several days recovering in Rome's Gemelli Hospital. The Holy Father underwent a laparotomy and a 3-hour procedure to repair his abdominal wall with prosthetics. Director of the Holy See's press office, Matteo Bruni, said the operation under general anesthesia was scheduled by the Pope's medical staff recently, after it became essential owing to a hernia that was causing pain and getting worse. Cardinal Pietro Parolin said Pope Francis would continue to work from his hospital bed while recuperating. All papal audiences have been put on hold until June 18th as a precaution. Meanwhile, the Holy See received scores of messages and prayers for speedy recovery, including wishes from the Sant'Egidio community, the Italian Bishops' Conference, the Communion and Liberation Movement, the Italian Catholic Action, and the Diocese of Rome. In Ukraine, people who evacuated their homes in panic due to heavy floods after a dam breach scurried for shelter once more as they heard what sounded like Russian firing overhead. Rescue personnel used boats to evacuate individuals from the Kherson region despite the risks. Rescue workers are overwhelmed by the damage to the Novakhovka Dam near the Ukrainian port city of Kherson. According to Kyiv, Russia detonated the dam over the Dnieper River to stop Ukrainian forces from continuing their counteroffensive against Moscow troops. Moscow disputes these allegations. At least 42,000 people, according to Ukrainian officials, are already in immediate danger from severe flooding. Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky has requested foreign organizations for assistance. Meanwhile, the Holy Father made an appeal for an end to the ongoing conflict that has been claiming countless lives for more than a year. France has started a new effort to restore and upgrade its dilapidated rural churches, including ones that are centuries old. This is part of a larger plan to identify cultural structures as historic monuments to aid their preservation. French President Emmanuel Macron visited Mont Saint-Michel in Manche, Normandy, where the idea was announced on June 5th. The president visited the historic pilgrim site dedicated to Saint Michael the Archangel on its 1000th birthday. President Macron said he wants to begin a new prescription that will be specifically dedicated to religious buildings. These structures are not only harmed more regularly and frequently by vandalism and neglect, but also by increasing humidity and invasive plants. This came after lawmakers penned an open letter to the president in February seeking measures to stop the demise of rural churches. An earlier study showed that around 2,500 to 5,000 church buildings will be lost by 2030 if nothing is done. 4 bishops who lead committees within the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops wrote to members of Congress asking them to address the rising issue of child exploitation on the internet. The bishops are in charge of committees whose mandates include safeguarding children and the weak, as well as supporting individuals and families. The prelate said that there is an immediate need for effective safeguards to ensure children cannot access inappropriate online media. Law enforcement agencies must be provided resources to ensure the safety and well-being of children. Governor Mike Parson of the U.S. state of Missouri has signed various bills into law banning so-called sex-altering procedures for children and prohibiting the participation of gender-confused male athletes in girls' sports. The Republican governor signed the legislation to protect the integrity of female sports and children from harmful experimental surgeries and procedures. The bill banning so-called sex-altering procedures for teenagers or young patients will take effect on August 28th. It also bans Medicaid from providing funds to adults who undergo such procedures. Parson also signed another bill banning gender-confused student athletes from joining sports teams opposite their biological sex from kindergarten through college. Schools that violate this legislation would lose state funding. Lawyers representing the Calvary Public Hospital in Australian Capital Territory said that the government is orchestrating a hostile takeover of the Catholic facility at a hearing requesting to halt the acquisition. The hearing began on June 7th to ascertain the validity of the legislation passed on May 31st to take over the Catholic hospital, and it is expected to come out with a ruling before June 13th. Senior counsel barrister David Williams urged the court to block the takeover, arguing that the legislation was invalid. The government's lawyers argued that the acquisition was legitimate. A few days ago, the Legislative Assembly of the Australian Capital Territory passed a bill to take over and transfer the control of Calvary Hospital to Canberra Health Services. California Senate Minority Leader Brian Jones has criticized the honoring of a member of an anti-Catholic group by the state legislature on Monday. Jones said in a statement that the decision to award a member of the so-called Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence, Michael Williams, was a slap in the face of Catholics who wish to cherish their faith and hold it as a cornerstone of their identity. As Williams was honored, the Republican caucus walked out of the Capitol in protest. Hundreds of faithful Catholics and Christians of other denominations held a prayer vigil outside the building as the anti-Christian organization's member was awarded. The so-called Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence is an organization supporting the homosexual agenda and comprises of men who cross-dress as nuns to parody the Catholic faith and religious life in public. A porn movie maker, Williams, was feted along with several other members of the homosexual movement under the auspices of Senator Scott Wiener, who is a prominent activist of the LGBT movement. A Northern Ireland Catholic bishop is putting a stop to plans to have school lessons on access to abortion in the nation. Bishop Donald McEwen of Derry Diocese is saying that this plan could lead children searching the internet for information regarding abortion. The prelate is also concerned over penalizing schools that do not offer such lessons. In the nation, it is mandatory for post-primary schools to have lessons on access to abortion procedures and how to prevent early pregnancy. Secretary Chris Heaton-Harris mandated the change to the regulations on relationships and sex education for schools on June 6th. Bishop McEwen said that the secretary should have engaged with all parties in Northern Ireland before making this decision. He said the new norm was based on an individualistic ideology that was bereft of any moral aspects. The annual Global Rosary Relay for the Sanctification of Priests will take place on June 16th, the Solemnity of the Sacred Heart of Jesus, with a worldwide prayer for priests. The event organizers said that millions of believers are slated to join the relay, which is in its 13th year. They added that there will be more prayer locations for the event, which is now recognized as a powerful initiative within the Catholic Church to pray for priests. During the Rosary Relay, each participating prayer location will pray a specific mystery of the Rosary at a particular time of the day. The relay's purpose is to express gratitude to God for the priests and to implore the protection of Our Lady on clergymen. In the American state of Utah, a representative is exploring options to ensure that norms to ban pornographic materials in public schools are not used to prohibit religious texts such as the Bible. This comes after a school district in the state removed the King James Bible from elementary and middle schools, citing that it contained violent and obscene content. Representative of the 39th District of the House of Representatives, Ken Ivory, told Fox News that legislative action is needed to plug loopholes. In March last year, the Sensitive Materials in Schools bill was signed into law banning obscene materials from public schools. In December, a parent requested the Bible be subject to review by the district, and in May, it was removed from elementary and middle schools. The representative suggested that the Attorney General should clarify the process, and both the legislature and the school board should introduce the exemption for the Holy Christian text. In the Czech Republic, the Senate will look into a petition that seeks to end abortion. According to the Stop Genocide group, some 14,000 people have signed the petition which demands the right to life from fertilization be enshrined in the Constitution. Some 15 years ago, a similar petition signed by 50,000 people ended in a fiasco. As per the norm, the upper house of parliament has to look into petitions which gather more than 10,000 signatures. The Stop Genocide group equates abortion to the genocide of children. The group also wants the Charter of Fundamental Rights and Freedoms to be amended so that life is protected right from conception. In the Czech Republic, abortion is permitted during the first 3 months of pregnancy for any reason. There are also exceptions until the 6th month in cases of genetic abnormalities. As the conflict in Sudan rages, a huge blaze was reported near a weapons factory in southern Khartoum on Wednesday, June 7th. The Sudanese military has been battling hard to protect this facility throughout the fierce fighting with the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces. Witnesses say that the paramilitary unit attacked the Yarmouk complex on Tuesday, and the following day they released videos claiming to have taken over a warehouse containing weapons and ammunition. There are fears that the proximity of gas depots nearby could wreak havoc on residential areas if the flames are not contained. Residents told reporters that the fire began in the morning and grew in size before evening amid explosions. There are reports that the paramilitary unit seized vast swaths of territory in the capital Khartoum after the conflict erupted on April 15th. They maintain an upper hand in spite of the military air raids and artillery fire. Reports from Nigeria say that the military killed 11 Islamic State West African province insurgents in operations between May 31st and June 4th. There are also reports that the jihadists killed or wounded around 20 soldiers when they ambushed a convoy on June 2nd. The military convoy was on its way to the town of Arej on the border of Niger and Chad to provide food supplies to the troops engaged in a counteroffensive against the militants. Military sources told a French news agency that several soldiers were lost in a vehicle-borne suicide attack. Jihadists roam free in the northeastern part of Nigeria, and they account for 75% of all terror attacks in the region after parting ways with Boko Haram. According to a watchdog that observes jihadist organizations, Nigeria has overtaken Iraq as the nation having the largest number of Islamic State-controlled operations. The Archdiocese of Los Angeles in the United States will celebrate the solemnity of Corpus Christi on June 11th with many Eucharistic processions. One of the solemn processions will pass through Hollywood, the famous entertainment district of the country. Alongside the parishes of the Archdiocese will host a traveling exhibit of Blessed Carlo Acutis' Eucharistic miracles. These events are part of the beginning of the second year of the Eucharistic revival. This is a pastoral initiative of the country's Catholic bishops to encourage the faithful to focus on the Eucharist and the real presence of Jesus in the Blessed Sacrament. The director of the Los Angeles Office of Divine Worship, Father Juan Ochoa, said that these processions are an opportunity to reaffirm the faith in the real presence. And those are your latest headlines. Join us again tomorrow for more. You can also visit swnews.org for more updates. Shalom.